It's not it hasn't been nominated yet, but we hope it will be. This particular film that you're going to see today is almost brand new. It's called Soviet Boy. It's the life of a young man in Yerevan, the capital of Armenia, Soviet Armenia. In a sense, it's partly an Armenian-oriented film and partly a film on life in the Soviet Union. For the public schools, American schools, they would look at it from the latter point of view and assess its value that way, a life in one of the republics of the Soviet Union. It just happens that I picked, because I was there, because of my own interests and ties and facility of filming, I picked Soviet Armenia to make this little film. Without any further statement, I'd like to show the film. Maybe we can talk about it afterwards. Should do it. I have a light. Oh, okay. Let me get it started and then. The sound is not coming through. Let's raise this.
Just kill it so we can hire it.
Well, if we make it on that, take it
She's the speaker.
Oh, well.
Plugged in now?
Here it comes.
You had the
Here it comes. It's on now.
No, it's not coming through. There's music here.
Lights.
Is the speaker connected right here?
Who has the roll sheet?
The roll sheet underneath the flag there, in case you want to sign it. The roll sheet is underneath the American flag. Right. Thanks, guys.
Well,
Have you ever read them before?
Shirley thinks you can.
What are they doing now?
While we're waiting, we'd like a little You get 5 classes ready when you choose.
Did you let that in?
No. Well, someone asked, what is this? Well,
I don't know what it is.
That is
Looks like
halak.
Leslie.
Halak means flat, halak means bread. So it's a flat bread.
What is it? Without the soda. Without the salt.
no, no, I did not bake it, unfortunately. You want one of those goodies? Hey, would you like some? Little goodie. Why don't you pass it down, okay? The lights? Goodie?
My name is Alexei, and I live with my family in Yerevan. This is the oldest city in the entire Soviet Union. Yerevan is the capital of the Soviet Armenia, a part of the USSR. In my grandfather's day, our town was a small village. Today, Yerevan has many office buildings and large streets. About 1 million people live here. The statue of Lenin, the founder of Soviet socialism, overlooks our main city square. We live in a socialist country. The people work for the state owns the land, factories and equipment.
Many laws governing Soviet Armenia are made here in Yerevan. Other laws come from Moscow, especially those dealing with defense, foreign policy, and economic planning. People of many ethnic origins live in the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics. Although they cling to their traditional ways, they form a part of the Russian-Soviet world. Within this huge land, largest in the world, there are 15 semi-independent republics representing many different nationalities. The largest and most dominant is the Russian Federated Socialist Republic. Soviet Armenia is the smallest and the most densely populated republic. It became a Soviet state in 1920, although it had been part of Tsarist Russia for many decades. This rugged land of high mountains and numerous plateaus has abundant sunshine but poor soil. The many archaeological ruins throughout the region are a reminder of an ancient civilization which achieved high levels of art, literature, and architecture. communist rule, the long tradition of creativity is continuing. Artists, poets, and writers have special privileges and receive high salaries. In the Madenatara, one of the oldest and richest libraries in the world, art students carefully recopy the works of ancient scribes. These rare, delicate miniature paintings capture the cultural wealth of 3,000 years.
Our history has been tied closely to the Christian religion. Armenia was the first nation to become Christian over 16 centuries ago. Today, religion is not encouraged in my country, yet church attendance has increased. Recently, young people have become more interested in religion. In just the last few years, over half of all marriages have taken place in churches.
Many people of Soviet Armenia are farmers. After the Communist Revolution in 1917, the workers of the huge Russian Empire overthrew the Tsar. The peasant holdings were then organized into large collective farms. On state-owned farms called sohos, farmers are paid for their labor not in money, but in farm products. Another type of collective farm is called a kolkhoz. Here the money is divided among the workers after the produce is sold. Most collective farmers also have private gardens in their backyards. The produce is sold in the open market for the best price. The seller keeps the profit. This extra income is often more than the salary he receives from the government. The principal agricultural crops of Soviet Armenia are tobacco, grains, fruit, and grapes. The government controls and plans all economic development. Chemical, plastic, and computer production account for much of the industry. Electrical generators, hydroturbines, and compressors are sent to all parts of the USSR. Industrial progress has been rapid because the region is rich in minerals, particularly aluminum and copper. Elaborate displays in the Yerevan Science Museum stress the importance of scientific and technical advancement. Numerous posters scattered throughout the city encourage the citizens to maintain high levels of production for the welfare of the country.
For hundreds of years, most of our people were poor and not educated. Since the Communist Revolution, everyone has a chance to go to school. I started when I was 7 years old. I must attend until I am 17. School is very difficult. The hours are long and we have few vacations. My favorite subjects are science and the Russian language. I also study math, history and English. There is much competition. Those with great ability go to the universities at the government expense. They have special privileges and are given good jobs when they graduate. After school, I attend the Young Pioneers. At these government camps, we learn leadership, camping skills, and the socialist teachings of Karl Marx and Lenin. Some of us will later become regular members of the Communist Party, which ruled the USSR. My family lives in one of the new apartments outside the city, where construction is still going on. I'm lucky to have a room of my own. In most Russian cities, many families have to share small, crowded apartments because housing is scarce. I am growing up in a socialist system, but my parents and grandparents hold to national traditions and beliefs. Our home life is centered around activities of the whole family. Even though I am an only child, I am not lonely because my parents both come from large, close families.
Hello.
Grandparents, aunts, and uncles visit our home often. On these occasions, my cousins and I look forward to sharing the traditional food. After our relatives leave, my father and I go to our basement workshop. There he teaches me to make furniture. He does this extra work because the government pay is not enough to meet all our wants. Woodworking is just a hobby for me. Someday I hope to go to the Science Institute in Moscow, but father repeats an old Russian saying, an extra trade or skill will always provide a meal at the table. High in the mountains is Lake Sevan, which is one of our many recreation areas. People from all over the Soviet Union come here for the holidays. During the summer month, I often go swimming in the irrigation canals which carry water from the mountains to the city.
On weekends, many families spend their leisure time at the amusement parks of the city. The children's railway encircles the entire park. The sign on the railway station is written in Russian and Armenian because both languages are spoken here. Beneath the dome of an abandoned church, families gather for a picnic. At heart, a generous and fun-loving people, they greet guests from the United States. And in the shade of twisted trees, they dance to the music of their ancestors. Soviet people go to the theater often. This dance company from Yerevan is renowned throughout the USSR. The theater, the museums, the sports events, and the circus provide the main forms of entertainment in the socialist world.
Sometimes, when I am by myself, I wonder about my future. I hope I will be admitted to the Science Institute. I hope the government won't send me to work in a far-off part of the USSR. As I read or play the piano, I glance at our beautiful mountains and I think of my people. We have always had a love of native soil and the closeness of family life. Our heritage is Armenian, but the Russian culture has strong influence on us. Above all, we are a socialist society. I hope we are able to preserve the best parts of both cultures as we strive for progress in the Soviet Union.
You have to sign the attendance thing, it's right underneath that flag there.
Are there any questions or statements?
When was this shot? What year?
Part was shot in '67, part was shot in '73.
You get a lot of cooperation, or did they screen what you?
I didn't ask for cooperation. I just
Aren't they very
went out.
strict?
No, in any country, you know, if I'm making a film about Armenians of California or the industry in California, I would ask the U.S. government, can I have your cooperation? The moment you ask the question, then it's red tape in any country. So I just go take out my camera and film, and no one interfered. Or at least I didn't realize if they were interfering. I felt quite...
They didn't cancel your passport.
No, the first time I was with a tour group, and after 2 days of being taken around, I hate museums and I hate going to special tourist spots, so a few of us rented a taxi and we went and went around. I looked, I'd heard I had some cousins, and even if you don't have cousins, you can always find cousins. In Armenia, everyone is trying to be a cousin. So I found some cousins, and they took me out in an unofficial taxi cab. They're not supposed to charge you, but I gave them a gift. First time I was there 11 days, second time about 13.
Michael?
Yes.
How do we get these films, or, you know, if you show them to our classes?
Well, this film, if the LA school system buys it, they haven't seen it yet, then you have to...
Because like I'm teaching intercultural heritage for the 9th graders.
What school system?
LA City.
Well, I suppose they have a lot of my films. They haven't got this one, I'm sure.
Oh, they...
So if you want any particular films to be previewed, you have to request through them. Of course, I can loan you one, but that's only a temporary thing. You know, personally knowing you. Any other?
Did you know, I was reading today the students' outlook, that they now have gum making factory in Armenia is one of the places they're making Armenia, Estonia.
They're going to the dogs too then. when you have I suppose when you have those consumer commodities, well, you get to love the easy life like we do in the United States. Russia has not encouraged the consumer items, but people eventually want some of those things. Let me ask you a question. This has no sound. I have to narrate, so if you want to turn out the sound. Does this film match your impression of what you thought Soviet Armenia was like, or should have been? Did you have any preconceived? Though I'm asking the non-Armenians. I'll ask the Armenians later.
Is there an attempt to discourage or to encourage the Armenian heritage and background and practices by the government?
I really don't know great, I can't speak for the government, but there's throughout the Soviet Union, I think that there's a tendency to encourage the Soviet, the socialist aspect, more than the national aspect, although they've had to go back on Lenin's phrase of doing away with all the languages and ethnic backgrounds. And, one mankind has not developed, so there have been times when they have encouraged the nationality to an extent. But the Russian influence, I find, is very strong. I don't know, there are quite a number. There's one apartment in Hollywood, full of them. No,
Because we teach in Hollywood, we have a lot.
quite a number are leaving, quite a number.
Are they getting out? You know?
I don't know, this surprises me. I got two people out, but they were real old. And but what surprised me is that the young, healthy ones are able to leave. But I guess if you put enough pressure and know the ropes and wait long enough, and maybe a little bribe, I suppose,
Well,
you
I
help
mean,
get out.
of course, they come to it with nothing, but I'm wondering if they're sneaking or,
No, they're getting a proper visa.
oh, they are.
No, they're not wetbacking, they're not getting across the board. No, they get visas, yeah.
The thing that surprised me, the slides that we saw last week in the presentation, I was amazed at the number of monuments to Armenian leaders, various leaders in art, music, literature, and so forth. And it seems surprising from what you're saying now in the film that we saw that the Soviet Union is discouraging because monuments cost a great deal of money. And if you're putting up a monument for a cultural background, it means then that seemingly, I may be naive in this, but seemingly it seems like they're encouraging the cultural background of the Armenian people.
They're not, I don't mean to say they're discouraging it actively, but wherever there's a decision to be made as between socialism and nationalism, this decision is in favor of socialism wherever it's possible. This is my point. There are a lot of monuments in Armenia, and the Armenians probably are as nationalistic, if maybe more nationalistic than other parts of the Soviet Union. They're very nationalistic, independent people, and Soviet control has not knocked their love of being Armenian out of them. Yes.
No, because, thinking about, their anti-religion and so forth, and yet I recognize that many of the churches were
Many
being
churches
restored.
are not being used. Yeah. Many churches are not being, it's quite unofficial now. For example, a person who wants to move ahead in Armenia or in the Soviet Union, on his credentials, on any reference, if he's got a resume, to put down that you're a member of the Presbyterian Church, a member of the Armenian Church, that you were a choir boy, all of those might look good in certain applications in this country or in a parochial school. But other things would look better and get you further ahead. If you're a member of the Communist Party, a member of the youth group, this will mean far more in moving ahead in the hierarchy in the Russian gray flannel suit syndrome. It will look much better. And so religion is not, I think, is a handicap if you want to really move up in the hierarchy. Yes?
When the children come to the United States, very often they haven't been in school at all, ever.
Really? How old are they?
Well, sometimes around 7.
Well, that's possible because maybe for 2-3 years they've been trying to get out.
Oh, awesome. And they wasn't put in school then? So.
Awesome. Now, there are many of the Armenians who come here, I believe, are not really native to Armenia. They migrated there
Yeah.
from Beirut or from someplace like that. And they're unhappy now. I'll get back to that. I want to illustrate this. I met one young Armenian there, in his 30s, late 30s. He had a very nice car. He'd come there from Paris. He was very unhappy. And his car was better than the car I have now. Some sort of French car, a young, big one. And I asked him specifically, I said, you know, we said this damn country and all that. And I said, well, what is it? Why do you want to leave? He said, there are no nightclubs here, no calling fairs yet. Well, so that's important to him, and there isn't. The sidewalks fold up, right? You know, they fold up at 8 o'clock. Jackie and others know there's not much.
Could you just answer, so the children are required to go to school?
Oh, yes, they're required to go to school. I don't know individual cases why they haven't gone to school.
When they're in school there, are they taught Armenian, English, and Russian, or just Armenian? Or just...
They're taught Armenian and then Russian. At what stage, I don't know. I'm not, Jackie maybe knows, but English at what stage?
I'm not sure, I think it's all agreed very much.
Armenian is basic. But the reason they haven't been taught, I really can't tell. Maybe
Is there
they-
any differentiation between the boys and the girls as far as who goes to school?
Well, I don't know. Armenians seem to favor boys. No.
Is there an organization that would welcome the Armenians, say, who came to California, an official, unofficial organization that helps families settle, get an apartment, etc.?
You mean organization here in town?
Yeah, or in any town that will
I
help
don't know.
newly arrived.
Others will have to answer that. The Protestant church, yes.
has just started a new social service agency because they've had so many requests for help. And rather than doing it that way, they're going to go to this particular place.
I'll try to get a job and all that.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, I noticed that the boy went to this youth camp. Do all the children have to go to this youth camp, or is that something that he chose to do?
No, I don't. He chose to do that.
They're not,
Yeah.
it's not mandatory.
I don't think every youth camp is mandatory.
It
They
seemed
could
like they
fit
were
them all.
indoctrinated.
Well, they indoctrinate, and that's true. Yeah. But this indoctrination, I don't know if it came through. Most of it, there were words thrown in about socialism and patriotism, but the emphasis was on ethics, morality, this kind of thing. This is what he was talking about. Okay, this, well, what about those who are of Armenian background who've been in Armenia? Do you think the film portrayed Armenia as you saw it? Or, Mary, you were there.
Yeah, but I think that it did not, I think there should have been more shown maybe of the different nationalistic things. There, like the posters in the gardens, you know, there's a lot of parks there, and when we were there,
Well, there are a lot of,
we saw kids from the age of 7, 8, 9 in little groups in the park. This was in summer, and they were just playing around there in different groups and things. But basically, okay. Yeah, because it seemed that most of the kids were like they played piano if they could, or they'd be into their education. From what I understand, in answer to your question, the Armenian over there started school at the age of 7. That's what I know. I don't know if it's fact, but that's what I heard.
That was mentioned in the film.
Yes.
I wondered if there was anything in the, comparable to our child care centers here, and whether the young children were reared within the family.
Yes, in the family.
Usually both mother and father working.
I don't know about the child care. Yes, Marilyn?
My feeling is that this film emphasized overmuch the socialistic Soviet aspect of it and undermuch the Armenian aspect of it. And from what I saw, the people that I met there and the activities that they were involved in, many of these activities concentrated around Armenian-oriented things.
Most of them are.
Yeah,
But,
and I didn't quite get that feeling there. I
Yeah.
got the Soviet as the dominant element and the Armenian as subservient.
Armenia is subservient as far as politics, it said defense, culturally they have autonomy. Yes.
So I'm thinking of the lifestyle of the people.
Many Armenians, all walks of life, act sometimes as if it's a country. It is a country, but it is not independent, it's autonomous in cultural areas. But that fine distinction needs to be made for Armenians, but not for the 6th and 7th grader in American public schools. He's not interested in how strong the Texans or a Russian boy should really not be concerned how strong the Texans feel about Texas first and the United States next, if that's the case. You're giving a picture of the United States and not trying to pull out the ethnic divisions. In an overall picture of the United States, even what's happening to black history would be minimized. Unless you're making a social impact film for the higher grades.
I feel the same way as Marilyn did. I feel that it was, the child was very apropos though. I feel he's a good Russian boy, not a good Armenian boy.
He's a good...
That's a film I get from the, feeling I got from the film. And I would have rather had a child, an Armenian boy, and had
well, he says he's thinking about his people.
Well, still, I felt exactly as Marilyn felt.
All right, you think that he's becoming he's going to be a communist?
He'll be a good Russian citizen.
And he'll be a...
And I almost had the feeling that the Armenians were probably an Armenian who could care less about being good.
Well, there are many Armenians who could care less. That's right.
Well, I don't get that feeling from your film.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Armenians here in this country have some misconceptions or preconceptions about what an Armenian is like in Armenia, because we have some of our own cultural behavior patterns here, which have been modified by the social content of this country, and so we're superimposing that onto another country, another society. And even though we still like to identify with Armenia, still there is a great gap between the kinds of cultural involvement that they're involved in and the type of cultural involvement we're involved here. And so I think we're too quick to transfer our feelings and placing it in another country.
All right, we'll go on.
Michael, do you want to say about
Yes.
comments?
Did you give
Yeah,
cards?
I passed cards around, and because as you're viewing this film, I think he would like you to write comments on it. As you notice, he said this does not have sound. It's not a finished product. It's in the process of being made. You'll narrate as he goes along. All right, Michael, tell him what you would like us to write down.
Yeah, you want to get the light?
In a moment. This film is about the city of Ani, A-N-I. The city of Ani was regarded as mythically, in a sense, the most important kingdom, most important capital of Greater Armenia. It was in power in the 10th and 11th centuries. At one time I called it The Last Days of Ani, trying to show what happened to Ani. Another title or working title could be Life in Medieval Armenia, or Life in Ani. It's an attempt to portray what life was like in Armenia at that time through the use of miniature paintings. This is all we have to go on, and with some recreation of how things might have been from various things that life scenes that I've picked. So I'm interested in your comments as to whether the film gives you a message, or what we ought to do to improve it. There's a lot of narration, and all that. Half of that narration will be thrown out, more than half of it. I'll read as much of it as I can to give you background. The one fault of the narration. The one fault of the narration will be, if this is all used, is that it would be too much for the film with no musical segments, and there are too many. There will be too many words here, foreign words, names of kings and areas that you will not understand, and possibly these have to be left out of the film. In other words, what I'm saying is this film then will not be intended for Armenians who are learned in Armenian history. I feel that the film will have to be for educated people who know nothing about Armenia, and one viewing will give them a feeling. But if you throw too many names, it may confuse them. Right now there are too many names in here, too many places. Let's look at the film, and let's see, where would be the most light for me to read this? Well, I can see it here. This is fine. Is that...
Should we open the volume mic?
Oh, you can get back, yeah.
Want to leave it open? I think we need some air. A lot of people here.
All right, leave the door open.
In the 9th century, Europe was still in the deep slumber of the Dark Ages. The Byzantine power was waning. The Arab Empire was retreating from the Caucasus and from Anatolia. Into this vacuum was resurrected an ancient realm, the kingdom of Greater Armenia at Ani. The failure of Islam to conquer Europe caused the Arabs to withdraw from the Caucasus and Armenia. And Armenia received a burst of freedom towards the end of the 9th century, lasted for nearly 200 years. Once again, the Armenians were masters in their ancestral home with Ani as their capital. Thus, on the petition of the Armenian nobility, Ashot I was crowned king of Armenia in 1885. It was confirmed both by the Christians and Byzantines and the Muslims. The 200-year rule of the Baghdadites was essentially feudal in character, with a loose political organization. In 961, Ani emerged from the mere fortress of the Arpachai to become the capital of the kingdom. Ani was to remain the seat of the Armenian government for no more than a human lifespan. During these twilight decades, the light of creativity burned bright in the rugged highlands of Armenia. Ani, as the capital of the Baghdadite kings, became a place of splendor. The Baghdadite kingdom of Greater Armenia was at the height of power during the reign of Chitjian I at the beginning of the 11th century. The Ani Cathedral was completed, its vaulted arches becoming the forerunner of Gothic architecture. Many sanctuaries, monasteries were built. The city grew progress rapidly. It came to be known as the city of 1,001 churches. illustrated manuscripts hidden in the recesses of remote libraries scattered around the world depict the triumphs and destruction of the last capital of the Kingdom of Armenia. In this film, miniature paintings are used symbolically to represent a way of life or to record events. Where possible, the rarest and most representative works in use. By themselves, these paintings occupy a large place in the history of art in Armenia. But they also tell a story and reveal the character and spirit of the Armenian people. Ani is situated on a plateau. On a plateau surrounded by high cliffs. In the distance are the peaks of olive. The large landowners had taken over the land of the smaller ones, and the peasants had become serfs. The Armenian nobility had divergent interests. Thus hatreds and rivalries developed. These provincial chiefs were never completely subdued by the national government in Armenia. Some of the Armenian nobility or Nakharar sided with the Byzantines and others with the Arabs. It depicts a very wealthy nobleman and his wife who paid huge sums to have this book prepared. Lettered by hand, decorated by gold and silver. Paper was known in Armenia as early as 964, but this particular miniature is on parchment. Medieval artists paid great attention to details. Simple line rendition of hands and facial expressions are noteworthy. Many Nakharars or provincial chiefs were patrons of art and architecture. The patriarchal father and mother here are the sponsors of this particular illustrated manuscript, now located in Jilpa, Iran. They come from a long line of nobility. Their sons and prince rise proudly from their vineyards in the valley below the walls of Ani, where they are placed within the walls of the city. The Arabic symbol that you saw on his arm is a reminder of the tribute that the Armenians were still paying to the Caliphate in Baghdad. Grandmother and grandchild and daughter-in-law are sunning themselves in the summer sun. By ancient custom, the brides were not allowed to talk to the mother-in-law. tradition that continued much after the downfall of Armenia. Princely families had many servants, and some had pets. Some had pets, even lions. Pets. The people of Ani enjoyed sport, wrestling being one of the favorite pastimes. Music permeated all phases of cultural life of the day. Shows courtship, yeah. While the prince sleeps, the workmen are preparing fires for cooking. I might say this particular picture was no less than the size of a postage stamp. Many of them that small. Sometimes when you see one part of the picture in focus, the other part isn't. It's the thickness of the paper. The roast lamb has been placed before the king. It's a typical dinner here. This is the roast lamb. Medieval Armenia was a happy land. Limited freedom was combined with relative peace. In the mountains, the shepherds cared for their sheep in the fertile, verdant valleys. Vines were planted, groves of olive trees flourished. There were many fruit orchards. Corn, wheat, rice, cotton, flax, grapes, these were main products. By the streams and irrigation canals, the women washed their clothes. Marginal illustration of the famous Baruch manuscript in Jerusalem revealed a general contentment of the land. Various birds, doves, roosters, peacocks were drawn on by the artist as if they were an ornithologist. This huge manuscript was written for King Chitjian, king of the Armenians at the start of the 11th century in Armenia. Stories of Armenian peasants describe how they sowed the seeds, throwing seeds to the birds as well as to the wind. There we are. Now we work with the birds as well. Medieval Armenia, there were trade unions, perhaps as early as the 9th century. Worker could not transfer from trade to trade. Skills were kept secret. Each group selected its own elders to meet as representatives from other trade groups. Their task was to defend labor rights against the city rulers. Nani and nearby villages' iron works was a major part of life. Now we talk iron plows and roads and mines, meddling. Ani flourished during the 10th, 11th centuries. Advances were made in art, music, and theology, in almost every aspect of life. Some of the manuscripts of this period look like frescoes, much like the frescoes on the walls of the St. Gregory Church, still standing on the hillside of Sokovani. The yellow is hammered gold. In the second half of the 10th century, John the Deacon founded the School of Higher Learning in Ani, with courses in grammar, philosophy, math, rhetoric, Greek, and theology. During the Islamic conquest of Transcaucasia, the Arabs tried to convert the Armenians to the religion of the Prophet. Yet the Armenians hung steadfastly to the Christian faith as the bulwark of their nationality. Long before the Renaissance, these people knew the value of eternity and beauty. In this manuscript, the artists depict their concepts of heaven and hell. These were also turbulent years for the Armenians. Throughout this 200-year reign, the Baghdad Kingdom of Ani faced constant invasions and civil war. Armenian notables, as we said, fought amongst themselves. Some were on the side of the Byzantines, others on the other. There were numerous peasant revolts. The people were overburdened with taxes and subject to usury. Poverty existed. And there were many people who lived in the caves and the cliffs of Ani. As early as the 6th century, the Armenians realized that the world was round. At that time, they were also using the mathematics of Euclid. the Armenians had learned to prepare paper. The earliest manuscript dates, Armenian manuscript dates from 972, probably made from paper from China. In Armenia, the knowledge of paper passed to Europe. By the time of the 10th century, bookbinding was an art in Armenia. Foreign scientists from far-off countries came to Ani for education. Dignitaries came from many lands to pay homage to the Armenian kings. The Armenians also traveled to many lands, from Singapore to Iceland. Armenian city planners visited foreign countries to share advanced ideas about urban affairs. The seaways of the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean were well known to them. They had discovered the perforated rudder, which made distant sea voyages practical. Trade was the chief basis of the Armenian economy, since Ani was at the crossroads of land power. Commerce enabled the Armenians to progress. And commerce enabled them to keep in close touch with their vastness in the Western world. Armenia thus became an intermediary between the Orient and the Mediterranean. At the same time, she amassed wealth. The Armenians traded in spices, silk, dyes, drugs, and precious stones. The best draperies were made from Armenian goat hair and silk. Armenians exported furs and leather goods. Armenian bathtubs were used by Byzantine emperors during their military campaigns. They made beautiful tapestries. Some of the designs are from bas relief on the walls of the Cathedral of Akra. The brocades are European manufacturers. Brocades that are being manufactured here in this picture show servitude on the part of the workers who are preparing these for the king. Many of these are found in Oriental rug design today. The height of her power and glory under King Tati storms were gathering over Ani. A mere generation later, onslaught would be made on her walls. these will be superimposed one upon the other and shown. Ani seemed destined to fall because of her geographical location. 7 separate small Armenian kingdoms existed at the time. Together they were called Greater Armenia. The nobility was great, yet they subordinated state interests to theirs. No great leader appeared to unify the realm. The Byzantines simulated Armenia by not helping her against Seljuk Turks. In fact, Byzantines were intent to subdue the Armenians and to bring them into their form of Christian Orthodoxy. In short, preoccupation with dogma was the weakness of the Byzantines. Because the Greeks and the Armenians hated each other, they placed culture and religion at the mercy of a common enemy, Seljuk Turks. Yet the downfall of Ani was to bring the eventual downfall of the Byzantine Empire itself. Middle of the 11th century, Greater Armenia had 10 million inhabitants. Such a state could have even saved the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines were short-sighted. They thought of eliminating Armenia would increase their territory. In 1042, the young king Hagopian of Ani was lured to Constantinople. Ani fell to the Byzantine forces. The military might of Greater Armenia was disbanded. Thus the way was open to Seljuk invasion. Ani was invaded by the Greeks, the city was burned, nobility increased, were executed in public squares. The storm over Armenia had come. In 1054, Seljuks had entered some of the Armenian districts. Others had approached Ani as early as 1021. Erzurum was sacked 1049. Kars was pillaged 1050. Nearly the invasions repeated. Recurring. Arslan, the brave lion who succeeded in the Seljuk hierarchy, swooped down on Armenia again, sieged Ani for 25 days. An earthquake caused the collapse of some of the walls of Ani. Finally, on June 6, 1064, the Turks scaled the ramparts and entered the city. Arslan took slaves and great booty and stole the great silver cross from the Cathedral of Ani. The outer city inhabitants had crowded behind the walls of Ani, yet the walls were not in good repair. It's said that Arslan massacred about 1,000 men in the pit and took a bath in their blood. The fall of Ani was a tragic suddenness in which the development of the race was arrested. Years later, at the turn of the 20th century, writer Lynch, traveling for Armenia, said of Ani, here was to be found, quote, the noblest example of the genius of the race. Some of the treasures of Ani, this is burning ground. Some of the treasures of Ani were taken to safekeeping in Akhtamar and Lake Van. Inhabitants of Ani, Greater Armenia migrated to Georgia, the Crimea, Moldavia, Poland, then established Lesser Linkia. In 1071, Manzakert on Armenian island reached lost in the settlements, and all of Armenia was overrun by the Turks. Ani was to change hands several times. Persian Georgians ruled the city. In 1239, the Tartars arrived. Ani was sacked again by the hands of Genghis Khan. In 1348, Ani was abandoned completely. So a deep sleep settled on the land. The countryside was given over to shepherds. Finally, the Armenians abandoned the country. Ani never rose from its ruins. An earthquake in 1319 sealed its fate. Armenia became the wasteland. This is an attempt to depict some of the people of Ani. Maybe it's too long. So. Became wasteland, tombstones were strewn over the land. Thousands were put on top of each other so that railroad Showing here, we trying to discover the life of Ani, going through museums and manuscripts. Trying to recreate what the life was like. Tombstones were strewn over the land. Thousands were put on top of each other so that railroad tracks, roads, and bridges could be built. Now Ani lies in the deep rubbish. His feet and squares of land, houses have crumbled. Not only Ani, but this being the situation, I generalize here, the situation in many parts of Greater Armenia. What was the general impression, or what seemed to you the significant things that the film was trying to tell you?
Civilization.
Sign the roll.
We'll let this.
Michael, I thought that the significant thing about this was it emphasizes, I think, one way that we are going to preserve our historical evidence that we did exist in that area where, you know, there is a systematic, still a continuous systematic attempt to eradicate the fact that we ever occupied that land. And as you can see where the churches are all being destroyed and are still being destroyed, they're being dynamited now. These manuscripts that have been snuck over into Armenia, many of them have been taken in parts. As long as we could hang on to these, this is evidence that we did exist. And that was, you know, our homeland. So I felt this was a big significant factor of the film. And done in a very interesting artistic way, using the manuscripts.
Well, there's two things fighting each other here. One is how strongly to tell the history and how much of the art to bring out. Which one do you think I ought to stress in the final film? You can't do both, I don't think. You're using art, but what do you think the purpose ought to be?
What do I think it should be?
Or what did you think it was?
I have a hard time deciding when I watch the
Okay.
Because it was the artistic, which is really very interesting. I personally, that isn't my thing, I would prefer more on the history, but that's just me. But doesn't art?
Yes,
I almost think that there should be two films here.
What?
One with the culture and art and the life, and the other with the history.
Well-
Because as it is, it was jumping around, and I got kind of lost, but I think making two films out of it,
Yeah.
and it would be.
Yes. Yes?
Well, I don't agree with her having seen the manuscripts. I felt that you were trying to show how the manuscripts depicted the history of the culture. And by flashing back and forth, to me, it helped me to understand the manuscripts better when we went to UCLA and stuff.
Yes.
I thought that this film really showed how they had put that down in the manuscripts, because you did say that there's a lot of history of the time in the manuscripts, and I think that's very important. To bring that in.
Is there another comment there? Well, this has been a problem with the film. I've tended to move more, I started with manuscript, and I've tended to move more in the direction of history. And
That's what history is.
yeah, you can see that I haven't resolved it yet in my mind. Any other comments of any kind? I'd like to get your comments if you've written them. Yes.
It was, what I heard from the film was that it didn't move in a smooth fashion from one situation to the other. And your close-ups were too fast. They came in too quickly and you moved out too quickly, instead of it being a slow, much more, proceeding more slowly and smoothly into that.
Did you write that down?
That-
No, shall I write it down? Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And as a consequence, it would take or deflect your involvement in the film, because you suddenly became conscious of movement instead of it being a subtle changing. It became a very dramatic kind of thing, and suddenly you were, stirred in watching the film. And also, when you went from one scene to another, it was very clipped,
Yeah, well, at this point, it's that way because this is a worksman. Later, they'll dissolve. One will go and one will come. This is your...
And a lot,
Okay, yeah.
and a lot of those spaces that you were showing individually, I think it'd be possible to put several of them and make it kind of panoramic.
This is very funny, because I'm going to say the complete opposite of this gentleman, although I hope he doesn't take it personally. I think everybody's going to perceive this very possibly in different manners, because it was very difficult to look at it objectively without a soundtrack.
Yeah.
However, I liked it, and I liked the jumping around because it adds variety, from an artistic viewpoint. And I think that you could use it for a historical film, and I think that your music could match the changes, and I think
have to
that
be
your
original
dialogue,
music, yeah.
I think your dialogue could just make it do whatever you wanted to do, really.
Yes. What kind of an audience is this film being prepared for? I mean, the network.
This audience, I think, the ultimate audience will have to be for adult, college level, public library type of, it's not school. And the Armenians will accept it. I mean, I'm not making a detailed film for Armenians because economically it's not feasible. It's not for a grade school. No. Well, I don't want to take the next speaker's time. I appreciate your comments, and I've got your other comments on paper now. Thank you very much.
Any more comments, Howard?
Everybody sign a roll, man.
I'm trying to keep this real brief this time because we have a lot to cover here. I just want to say on the schedule for the 16th and the 23rd of February will be as is. I think next week we'll take account of the number that will be going to the, on the 23rd of February, we will be going to the Armenian high school as a field trip, and we have planned a dinner there. The dinner will be about $4. If you're on a special diet of some sort and you feel that you're not going to be able to share with the dinner, you could bring your own or something like that. But by next week, I would like to have a count of those who would like to have the dinner at $4, so they can get ready to prepare. Jackie? Oh, yeah, you can always bring any guest at any one particular time. March the 2nd, we will have the Armenian architecture along with Armenian painting. Kero Antonian will come that day. March the 9th, we will have the Reverend Manjigian from the Holy Cross Church. He's really digging up a fantastic lecture for that particular day. He's going to present a historical overview from the Zoroastric Persian period to the cultural, traditional aspects of the Armenian Church. Again, if you'd like to bring guests on that day, I think, I can't wait till I hear what he has to say. It sounds so great. And then for the other half of that hour, there's going to be he's going to try to get the mass music and show on traditional days, one day out of the year where a particular music is used for a particular mass. So that should be a real interesting meeting there. So March the 9th, we will be meeting here. And then the other still stands as is. Today, I'd like to thank, Joyce Altunian, will you come up with your little presentation? During this particular break between one speaker and the next, I'm hoping that as some of you will take the opportunity as your outside assignment, if you are so inclined, to prepare the refreshment and then come up with, show us or explain to us how you made it, and let us sample it. I'm sending out a sign-up sheet with dates, and because we have such a large number of people, if you get in groups of, 3 or 4, 5, sign up, if you got into groups, because it does run into quite a bit of a problem. So this will be coming around. You have 6 times to sign up here. And so I'm just going to let Joyce take over from here.
I'm just passing around the recipe.
Oh, and the bread is provided by, let's see, my 2 from Ramona Elementary from Hollywood. Thank you.
I've made 50 of these, and it looks as though there are either 50 or more of you. What I was going to do, I had forgotten before I made it to leave one unmade. And so what I was going to do was unroll one of them here, but I think what I'll do instead, if you'll just pretend that this is a grape leaf, because this is what it looks like when it's made, and I'll pass these around in just a moment, but I'm afraid if I unroll one of them, we'll be one short, and I have an idea that there are enough people here who will need the whole thing. This is called the Yalanchi sarma. It's the cold dolma without the meat, just a rice filling. The recipe you have tells you what was put into it. The longest part, it's actually in two parts in a way. The longest part is getting the onions cooked, believe it or not, and also, of course, wrapping, and that takes a long time, especially if you have a lot of them. But the rice, I use the Uncle Ben's. I think next time I might not. I don't know, it depends. But what you really do is the olive oil you put in a skillet and get it hot, very hot, and the onions you chop relatively fine, diced, about maybe a fourth of an inch, half an inch, that sort. And you cook them down until they're very soft. You don't want them brown, really, before it gets golden. And it will take a long time. Now, I was doing this for 2 classes, actually, so I made 100 of them. The other 50 went to the other class I'm taking, and then 50 here. You probably wouldn't make that many unless you were making it for a large crowd. But it took, I'd say maybe almost half an hour just to cook the onions down, because it takes a long time when you have a lot of the oil in the skillet. Anyway, you cook it down, and I put the garlic into the onions while they were still hot. And then you really just mix everything else together. I pretty much did it just in the order of this. The mint I did use, and the garlic I did use, even though they're optional. I didn't use the basil, so you can do whatever you want. In any case, pretend this is about a thumb-size amount of the filling. And like I say, I'm sorry I didn't have any left over because I made so much for the 2 classes. But you just put it into your grape leaf. Your grape leaf is more about this size. Oh, okay, that might be even better.
Would you do it on top of your box because of
Here?
the hiding?
This, you mean?
No. Put your lid back on
Oh,
top
I
of
see,
the box.
okay. Say your grape leaf is about this big. They come in different sizes, of course. And I used, I bought way too much. I didn't know how many leaves came in a jar, but I bought the Yergot grape leaves. They were very tender, and as a result, they tended to break after they were cooked. Some of them. These didn't, but some of the others did. Anyway, they have about 90 to a jar of 1/16-ounce jar. So I really didn't need more than 2 jars maybe for the 2 sets that I made, and I bought 3. So you have to know how many approximately come in your jar, if that's possible to find out. But in the